Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day-to-day lives. Let's start with the video. My sister-in-law, Amy, has wanted to have a close relationship with me ever since I began dating her brother, Nick. Amy and I went to the same high school and were pretty much in the same classes throughout our school lives, and well, needless to say, that resulted in us having the same group of friends. Then, when college happened and Amy and I got into the same undergraduate school, things became crazier. It started feeling like I was almost meant to be Amy's friend because even though we knew each other all our lives, Amy and I were, well, just acquaintances. And honestly, now that I look down memory lane, it was good that way because once I became her friend, it took me no longer than a year to realize why we weren't friends, and most importantly, why no one else from back in high school remained in touch with her, even though she constantly put so many efforts to do so. It is all rooted in her dirty jealousy. Amy was a jealous woman, and more importantly, Amy would do anything to get rid of her jealousy, and by anything, I mean absolutely anything, even if that meant turning other people's lives upside down. And I had found out about her antics the moment I had found her in bed with Alexandria's boyfriend. Alexandria, our high school friend. And why, you may ask? Why was Amy jealous of Alexandria and her boyfriend? It was simply because she seemed too happy and needed a reality check in life to keep her grounded. And yes, guys, it was at this moment that I realized Amy was crazy, absolutely out of her mind. I wanted to be far away from her, as far as I possibly could be. I met Nick at an intercollegiate fest. He was in his last year of getting his degree while I was at the start of my second year. We hit it off immediately that day, and I'm not going to bore you with the details, but we began dating soon after. And to put it in short, I was terrified. For the first couple of months at least, and not because I was scared or anything to be in a relationship, but because I was scared of Amy. I thought if I kept this secret for as long as I could. Nick and I both had decided to be a little hush-hush on the relationship for a while. So I got exactly 6 months before I found out that the nightmare I was trying to avoid was soon going to be a reality. And it was when Nick decided it was about time that he introduced me to his family. It was the first time I spent Christmas dinner with his family, and I was greeted by Amy. I still remember how she squealed, how she was so excited and she just knew I was hiding something from her. I was stunned, but I held my composure somehow and went about the meeting, and that is where I found out where Amy got her horrible attitude from. It was from her darn family. I mean, they spoiled her rotten, guys. She was the youngest in the family after Nick and the only daughter. Nick's family was rich and, well, according to them, their little princess could do no wrong. And even if she did something wrong, it was a mistake. And if it wasn't a mistake, then it was just the other person's fault. I know I should have run for the hills at that moment itself, but I was crazy, young, and in love. And with the weirdest combination of fate, I decided to stay with him, and here we are. Nick and I have been together for a whopping 5 years now, engaged for 2. Amy has been trying to become my best friend, but I know she's looking for ways to outshine me time and again because I am the reason why her shine has dulled. She thinks I owe her a relationship simply because I'm with her brother. It feels like an obsession to me. Looking at her doing all these grand gestures to befriend me, all the while absolutely not respecting the lives of people around us, is the thing I hate the most about her. She knows it. I know it. Nick knows it, and his entire family knows it, and can see it clearly for themselves, but no one wants to speak about it. It feels like screaming in a void every time anyone ever brings it up. But how long was everyone going to suppress this topic? It was all going to come to a head And it did, right before Nick and I tied the knot. It all started off the moment we announced our marriage. Amy was so excited because she was going to be the maid of honor. I immediately cut down her assumption and told her she wasn't going to be. Amy thought she could somehow get me to change my mind on this. Then she got my in-laws, Nick, our relatives, and even my parents to pile up on me. But even with all this pressure, I just knew I couldn't let Amy win this fight. I knew this wasn't her trying to build a bond. I knew she was trying to insert herself, something she's mentioned hundreds of times. Here's the thing, though. Ever since I've decided to stay on my grounds, not just my in-laws, but even Nick, who knows everything Amy has done, have gone as far as to say he's reconsidering the marriage. My in-laws have decided to pull out the money they were planning to put into the wedding. Now, this wasn't the reaction I was expecting. I mean, I'm not surprised, but I am disappointed. Am I so much of an a-hole in this situation? I truly appreciate some advice here. I decided to move in with Alexandria, one of the only people living close by to me, and dare I say, one of the only people who cares enough to understand my side of the situation. I've had enough. I truly have. I honestly can't get myself to act like someone who understands Amy anymore. Screw her and my in-laws. I truly don't think that excuses her for being a horrible person. But this isn't a post to confirm to you guys that Nick and I have officially separated. I know that is what a lot of you guys are expecting, but sadly, I cannot give that to you guys, at least yet. But what I made this post for is to tell you guys we definitely have taken a short break from this situation. And yes, that means we've also postponed the wedding. I'll keep you guys updated on what happens next. It's been 2 weeks since everything went down, and well, quite a lot has stirred up ever since. Firstly, Nick and I finally decided to meet up and talk. I'm sad that I have to say this, but the meeting was not what I was expecting. To start things off, Nick wasn't there alone, as he had promised. It immediately gave me a sense that this wasn't the Nick that I knew. This wasn't the mature, smart, and communicative Nick that I had once loved. He came there with his mom and Amy, both looking like they were ready to pile up on me. The moment I saw them, I was honestly ready to turn my back around and go back home, but I knew if I didn't face them in this situation, there wouldn't be much of a point to any of this. So I went ahead and sat down at the table. Nick looked guilty. He had his head down for the most part, not speaking much, while his mom and Amy were in full-blown argument mode, trying to shut down every point I ever tried to make with the same old, Amy can never be wrong, BS. I knew I had enough the moment Nick's mom said I should be grateful that Nick gave a person like me a chance to come into his life, and Nick said absolutely nothing. I told Nick that our relationship was over at that point. I guess that is where a light bulb flicked through his head and he began talking, but now I wasn't going to let him. I simply got up and left. I had finally reached my breaking point. Unlike earlier, and even though I'm heartbroken, I know I'm not going to allow anyone to change my mind on this. Update 3. Hi everyone. I know I ended my last update abruptly and I apologize for that. I was so shaken up by the entire situation that I just didn't have the guts in me to write everything down. But it's been 2 months since everything went down, and I think I've reached a point where I can talk about this situation without shaking like I usually do. So, as you all know, Nick and I separated by the time I posted my second update. Today, I finally moved out of our shared apartment into my place, and this may sound weird to a lot of you, but I feel like I finally can take a breath of fresh air. And it was all because I sat and thought through things and realized just how much Nick was like Amy and all of his family, and just how much I was trying to get myself convinced that it wasn't all that bad. I wouldn't lie and say I don't think things were different. I still think Nick would have stood up for me, especially the moments he tries to reach out to me, apologizing to me for everything, asking me to get back with him because he just realized how much he had messed up. But I know for a fact I just can't give him that chance. I know my self worth a little too much to take him back after what he had done to me at the restaurant back when we decided to meet. So that's where I am currently. It feels like I'm starting from stage one in life once again after everything I had built in college. But I've also come to a point where I'm okay with that because at least I can feel a sense of self respect while doing so. So thanks everyone for being so kind and helpful. ESH. Indeed, your in laws are the a hole, but you're not any lesser of an a hole to yourself if you thought your partner would be any better if he supports a sister like Amy. NTA, glad you stood your ground before it was too late. Talk about a crazy entitled family. NTA, I guess you were right when you said you were young, dumb, and stupid because the red flags were probably there all along. You just saw them now. Regardless, sooner or later, I'm just glad that you did, OP. Good luck with this new chapter of your life. I'm 31, female. My ex-husband, 35, male, got married less than 6 months ago with his girlfriend, 25, female, and she got pregnant very fast. Recently, he told me that they were having a girl. I am a huge fan of the movie Frozen, so when our daughter, 6, female, was born, I wanted to name her Elsa, and my husband agreed to that. I know it is a little dumb to name your kids after things like that, but it was not a super unusual or ugly name. It is pretty, and it means a lot to me. My husband and I divorced when our daughter was 3. We don't hate each other, but we're not best friends either. The issue with the new baby is that he explained to me that after he told his new wife the story behind the name of Elsa, she proposed that their daughter should be named Anna, so they could be sisters like in the movie. For me, it is totally unfair that they are stealing my naming process from me like that. What if I have another daughter? It would have been perfect to name her Anna, and now I wouldn't be able to do it without it looking like I'm stealing from them. My husband doesn't even like Frozen that much. He always said his favorite Disney animated movie was Bolt. I don't know if the mother likes Frozen, but I am totally sure she doesn't like it as much as me. I demanded to him that they choose another name, but he thinks I'm acting crazy. I call my divorce lawyer, but she doesn't think there is anything we can do about this. My mother just laughed at me. I feel so defeated. My sadness turned into anger, and in an impulse of rage, I called my ex-husband. I told him that if they insisted on using that name, I would make everything I could to sabotage the relationship between our daughter and theirs. So they never were real sisters like Elsa and Anna. He got really angry and said horrible things to me. I immediately regretted saying what I said, and it is not true. I would never do that, but this whole situation has been so horrible for me, and now he is really angry too. I think that I am ultimately in the right about why they shouldn't use that name, but I was wrong in saying what I said. I want to insist on them picking another name, but without going too far. Am I the a-hole? YTA. You have every right to be upset, but that's where it ends. It's a shitty circumstance, which is understandable to feel upset and angry. But to demand they don't name their daughter what they choose and to call your divorce lawyer is batshit crazy. You have absolutely zero say in what other couples name their child, even if you were previously with one of them. And try to calm down and look at what you're saying. 3 adults are arguing who gets to name their child after Disney characters and who doesn't. This is some shit I'd expect out of my 7-year-old cousins, not grown-ass parents. YTA, you don't own the naming process, particularly ones that are not original to you. Naming kids based on popular characters are not unique. Also, you opened the door to this when you named your first child. Your ex was part of the first child's naming process by giving his okay, and you shouldn't be surprised that he is using a similar, same process to name his second. I, 31, have about 67,000 in debt between college, my car, and a little bit on my credit card. I've been making my monthly payments on all of them, but it will still be many decades before I'm debt-free. My fiance, 29, is relatively debt-free. This wasn't always the case. She got a few scholarships to help with college, but did still have to take out a few loans to finish things up. She had to get a new car because the old one was cursed and was in more accidents while parked than we can count. And she did go through a manic period and almost run up her credit card in her early 20s shopping so much. However, she spent a lot of time getting her finances in order, working multiple side gigs on top of her normal job, which I commend her for, and now is debt-free except for her mortgage, which she makes a ton of extra payments towards, and has almost $300,000 in investments, savings, etc. I'm very proud of her for everything she's done. Now that we're engaged, we're planning on moving in together. She had a roommate. We had to wait for the lease to end on before I could move in. And she said before the wedding, she wanted me to be debt-free. We chose a date 3 years from now, since some of our family is out of the country and needs to save. And so it will be on our 7th anniversary, both of our favorite number. She pulled out a spreadsheet of my debts and pointed out how if I put all of my paychecks minus maybe $200 a month for fun money into paying off my debt, I'll be debt-free by the wedding. She would cover everything else, the mortgage, food, bills, insurance, our pets, vacations, date nights, etc. We could then both aggressively save for that last bit of time for a nice honeymoon, and after that, focus a good amount of our funds on taking out the mortgage and getting my own savings up to snuff. I thought about it for a day or so and came back with this counteroffer. She pays off my debts and I pay her back in a year and a half, since I wouldn't also have to be paying interest. We would put a bigger dent in the mortgage and still stick to the timeline. She seemed unhappy with this and said she would have to think about it first. I casually mentioned it to my friends over beer to get another perspective, and they said I'm the a-hole and they would do anything to have her 2-year offer to get debt-free, and that even if I paid her back, I'd still be taking 1/5 of her savings for a year and a half. So I'm here for judgment. Am I the a-hole? YTA, financially, freedom and independence is clearly hugely important to her. She is being so gracious and hardworking to cover all of the bills while you get your life together financially, and you want to ask for more? Also, even if you want her to loan you the money, you need to get it all done in writing with strict timelines for payback and clear compensation for her if you can't. If you can't figure out how to meet her need to a debt-free partner, then end it now and let her move on to someone with similar goals. YTA, just pay your debt. I don't see what the problem here is. Obviously, she crunched the numbers and you can afford to pay your debt back in the time limit with $200 in fun money left over every paycheck, while she pays for all of the bills and date nights and everything else. I'm lucky if I get $200 a month for fun money after paying all of my own bills and whatnot. You sound like you'd rather she just take care of it all at once with a far-off payment date, which sounds a whole lot like you want her to pay for it all so that you can neglect paying for it. I have doubts you'd remember to save it all back and would pay her back in that time. No matter how much money she has or how much she loves you, taking on $67,000 of debt for somebody else is always a gamble on your own finances. She is essentially handing you that money with no guarantee you'll pay her back for it. You sound like you spend your money poorly to begin with. You say it will be many decades until you're debt-free, but she came up with a plan to get you there in 3 years where you don't have to pay for anything else at all, and you won't even take that. YTA because she laid a good plan where she covers most of, not all living expenses from what I can tell, and you can be debt free before marriage. Instead, you counteroffer and put her into a bad position where she will be left with your debt and burden if you separate and refuse to pay her back. Of course, no one likes interest rates, but your counter is her having to take 100% of the risk if you don't pay her back. Don't do this to her. It's not fair. She paid off her debit. Do your job. Say thank you. Don't be greedy and don't put her in a bad emotional or monetary position. Plus, if her capital savings is locked into some long-term GICs, then the interest paid by you is offset by what she gains from her return. If you marry, then you can use her returns on the investment to pay towards mortgage or whatever else.